Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to the Bret Lueder Show. I'm super excited today. I've got one of the few real bona fide legends of ufology. His name is Norio Hayakawa. 60 plus years of UFO research. He's come to some very interesting conclusions. He was one of the original investigators, legitimate journalist that was on the case of the Dulce base. And we're going to talk about that and some very interesting subjects today. He's also got a new documentary called The Conspiratologist. I love that word. I've never heard that word before, and it's brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show Norio Hayakawa. Norio, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Brett, for having me on your program. I'm so excited, and I'm just. This is such an honor and privilege for me to be on your show, Brett, because you've been in this field for many, many years, just as well. So, anyway, thank you so much.
You're well. It's an honor to have you as well. So I would look at you, Norio. I've been in this for about 20 plus years. I would look at you as one of the giants on whose shoulders that myself and other people my age are standing on. So thank you for, they say thank you to your service for military people. I think in the end, the ufologists that have survived, for one, stayed out of trouble, not gotten into too much backbiting, and came to the conclusions that I've read about, um, people like yourself are going to go down as maybe heroes. I don't know if that's a too strong of a word, but you've been in the UFO wars, as I call them, and any veteran that lives through that, and even at my age, the stuff I've seen, Norio, at different conferences and researchers going at each other, and the backbiting behind the scenes, the gossip, the misinformation, disinformation, with the truth somewhere in there, anyone that can survive that is a real trooper. So the honor is really mine. And one of the first things I want to talk about, Norio, is you've come to some really interesting conclusions based on your many decades of research. And one of them is that you think that witnesses are pre-selected. Is that correct?
That's as far as my research is concerned. I came to that conclusion that not everybody seemed to be able to witness this kind of events. And this is the reason why I have said that there's a reason for a person to be able to witness an event, this kind of a weird, strange event. And so, yes, I am a believer that this phenomenon, for some strange reason or other, seem seems to pre-select its observers for reasons unknown yet.
Okay. Uh,
Excuse me.
it's okay. I've noticed a similar phenomena within the phenomena. Um, Certain people apparently seem to be able to call them down. So there seems to be some kind of a communication or connection there. Maybe they're selected for that kind of thing. If you've ever been up to the James Gilliland's ESETI Ranch in southern Washington, you see James do that kind of stuff all the time. Um, my own personal take is that it's a type of a public relations campaign where they're slowly implanting those seeds. Even if you just see it for a second, they're planting a seed in that person's subconscious.
Exactly, and you said it right. And I right now, of course, time has not come yet where everybody would be able to see. But for right now, and I'm saying for right now, temporarily, it seems like there is a pre-selected audience for this phenomena to be observed. But eventually, I don't know when that's going to be, but everybody will be able to see this phenomenon.
Okay, I would agree totally. That actually is in line with an official public relations campaign where you first target a specific audience and you learn about that audience, you study it so that you can communicate it to it more effectively. So we're all definitely on the same page here. That's one of the reasons why, one of the many reasons why I wanted to interview you. And so you cut your teeth on the Dulce base case. Is that correct, or did you have something before that?
No, it's Dulce is my favorite topic, and I've been involved in the Dulce phenomenon, which I call it a phenomenon.
Okay.
Uh, I've been involved with Dulce phenomenon since 1988 when I first learned about the existence of such location, you know, and also the alleged underground facility near Dulce, New Mexico. And I've been involved in this research since 1988 when I first learned about it, strangely, through a communication from a personality that's well known, and that is John Lear. In 1988, I received a small packet of information concerning the two topics at the same time. That is, the topic of Area 51 in Nevada and Dulce, New Mexico's alleged underground bases. These two topics came around the same time, that is 1988, way before the appearance of Bob Lazar in 1989. So it's, a year before that. So since 1988, I have known about Dulce, New Mexico, but people in Dulce uh, knew about the Dulce phenomenon since around 1967 and
Oh,
and so on. And I will explain to you why 1967 in a little bit later.
okay.
But, the people in Dulce itself became, well, fascinated by their location, basically in the late 1970s, I would say, late 1970s. But as I said, the beginning of everything was in 1967, which I will explain to you why. But anyway, for the general public, the public at large had no idea about the alleged existence of a underground base in Dulce, New Mexico, located in the main community of Dulce, which is the main community of the expansive Jicarilla Apache Reservation in northern New Mexico.
Right. Yeah. So for those that don't know where Dulce is, Dulce in north central, I would say, pretty close to the Colorado border.
That's
Um,
correct.
you got the I got the book over here, UFO Crash at Aztec by Wendell Stephen and Bill Steinman. Um, uh, the
That's
Kirtland Air,
correct.
yeah, Kirtland Air Force Base is right in that general vicinity. Um, Roswell's in New Mexico. Crash at Corona. Stanton Friedman's famous for that book. Lots of activity with UFOs going on in that area. But
That's true. And we're talking about a specific area of this tremendous, expansive area of New Mexico. And, we're basically concentrating on the northwestern area of New Mexico, close to the Four Corners area. And I'm talking about places like Dulce, New Mexico, Aztec, New Mexico, which you just mentioned, and Farmington, New Mexico. These areas are located near not far from the Four Corners area, an area of much importance. But in general, this area is kind of far from the central area, like Albuquerque, where I reside right now. And then, of course, it's much, much farther than the White Sands Missile Range areas of New Mexico. So, these locations, Aztec, Dulce, Farmington, and so on, are quite far from the rest of the New Mexico in general.
I have a feeling that's no coincidence.
It's no coincidence at all, Brett.
Yeah, so I've been flipping through the book by Greg Valdez, and you know, it's Dulce base, and then something, the subtitle something about from the direct files of his father, Gabe Valdez, who was an investigator, a law of law enforcement inside of Dulce, and maybe somewhere a state trooper at some point, whatever his career kind of shifted around a little bit there. But the whole time he's doing this investigation, and passes away, and then Greg inherits all of the son gets all of his materials, and then comes out with this book. And long story short, he basically makes the case that the alien thing is really just a cover for a secret project by the Air Force to develop stealth technology in various ways, and maybe propulsion systems in various ways. Is that what it is? Is that what it's all about? Excuse me.
Well, Greg Valdez, son of the second son of the late Gabe Valdez. Greg Valdez wrote that book, and his conclusion was that there must be some kind of a prosaic explanation to the mystery of Dulce. But my position is that we cannot rule out anything. We cannot rule out anything. So this is the reason why I am reluctant to make any dogmatic statements such as the Dulce base, the existence of the Dulce base itself, because we just don't know. We just don't know the bottom line, because I feel strongly that there is something there in the Dulce area of New Mexico. There's something there, but the difficulty is that we cannot get to the bottom of this location as far as the existence of the base and the aliens and the UFOs and everything like that. It's still unsolved, and it's still a location of high importance, because there are still many sighting reports even now in the Dulce area. And so this is what makes it different from places like Roswell, New Mexico, in the south of New Mexico, where practically nothing is happening. But even today in the Dulce area, I am of the opinion that there is something which I came to describe as some kind of a paraphysical phenomenon that exists in the Dulce region of New Mexico.
Okay. And that just opens up a whole panorama of possibilities. But to simplify, and I wouldn't even have thought when I started researching UFOs that I would say something like this. But once I discovered that the main character in the Billy Meyer case, Semyase, was actually a variation of the name of the leader of the fallen angels from the Book of Enoch, Semyaza, that really started to make me think that, wow, maybe some of the Christians or some of the other researchers, that much more of a small group within ufology, that are saying that this is demonic or evil, maybe there's something to that. And so when you describe that there's something going on, that kind of opens that kind of window for me. What's your take on that?
Yes, you just brought up the main interest of mine. That is, we still don't know everything about this amazing, mysterious world we are living in. So
Right.
I'm a person that just try to put my 2 feet on the ground, but yet at the same time trying to be open to what reality really is. And so, this is the reason why I have been studying the Dulce area, because it's an area of just I don't know. There's some mystery about that. No question about it. I have visited that area many times. I live in Albuquerque right now, but it's only about a 3-hour drive from here to Dulce, and so occasionally I still visit Dulce. I have lots of friends in the Dulce area because, in 1990. I took a television crew from Japan to that area to interview the local people. That was in 1990, and it still fascinates me. And many people have misconceptions about the history of Dulce, New Mexico. In fact, everybody just takes it for granted that Dulce is the original name of that area, but it isn't. Dulce became the name of the main community in the tremendously humongous Hickory Apache Reservation, which was created by the United States government in the early 1900s. In fact, around 1907. Well, at that time, New Mexico was not even a state. New Mexico was part of what's known as New Spain. And in 1912, New Mexico became part of the United States. But around, a little earlier, the creation of Apache Reservation became a reality. So it was around 1907 that the people of New Mexico and the so-called government at that time decided to create that reservation. That was in 1907, and but until that time, this whole area was not known as Dulce, but Agua Dulce, which means sweet water in Spanish, because that entire area was part of a vast area known as New Spain, which was part of Mexico. The descendants of the Spanish conquistadores who came to New Mexico in the mid 1600s, they came to this area, and their descendants are presently known as the Hispano people. When the Spaniards came here to New Mexico, they came here without, their wives, only as soldiers. So they came here to this area, and then eventually they intermarried local people, the native people, and their descendants are now called the Hispano people. And so when New Mexico became a state of the United States in 1912, at that time, New Mexico was already populated by the descendants of the conquistadores, and they were called the Hispanos. So many Hispano people, they excelled in certain occupations, such as ranching. So yes, northern New Mexico in the Dulce area, there were lots of ranchers who lived there and were raising cattle and other animals, and when the Hickory Apache Nation was officially established, the local Hispano people were allowed to remain inside the Hickory Apache Reservation, even though they were not Native Americans. And so the descendants of the Hispano, community that lived in the Dulce area were allowed to remain there and continue their ranching occupation. And so today, if you go to Dulce, New Mexico, not every resident of Dulce, New Mexico is Native American. there are still some Hispano people like the Gomez family who has one of the largest ranches in that area. So this is something that many people don't seem to understand. But I try to explain all these things in many of my writings about Dulce and so on. And the pronunciation of Dulce is. The correct pronunciation is dulce, which means sweet, but originally it was agua dulce, which means sweet water. But the people today call that town Dulce or Dulce, which is
Dulce, yeah,
anglicized the pronunciation.
right. That's how I pronounced it. So I stand corrected. Um, well, so this reminds me of, there's other examples around the world of cultures that mix, and they usually come up with some kind of a folk tradition or spirituality, that might be, let's say, mixed Jickery Apache with whatever, maybe Catholicism or something from the Spanish conquistadors. I'm not sure, but people around that area were noticing lights in the skies for a long, long time before Paul Benowitz came onto the scene. And I think that's really where Dulce starts, is with Benowitz. Would you agree with that?
I would agree that Paul Benowitz had the major impact on the spread of the Dulce phenomenon. Yes, that was around 1979. But as I told you before, in 1967, the Department of Energy of the United States did something near Dulce. That was on December 10th, 1967, in which the Department of Energy exploded a nuclear device just about 22 miles southwest of the town of Dulce on December 10th, 1967. And this was called Project Gas Buggy. And it was one of the programs of post-World War II in which United States decided to see if they can use atomic energy for peaceful purposes. And so one of the project was to create this, this Project Gas Buggy, which was basically to ease the flow of natural gas that's abundant in that area. And so on December 10th, 1967, the United States government sent federal agents to Dulce and to Farmington and to Aztec and all those, folk owners area communities to let them know that on December 10th, they may be feeling an earth shaking a little bit. And so they warned the people over there. So indeed, on December 10th, 1967, an explosion underground took place about a mile and a half underground inside a Carson Forest, National Forest, which was right next to the Hickory Apache Reservation. And so that was the beginning of, I would say, something that's strange, that unexpectedly came around. And I'm talking about the results of that underground explosion. After that explosion, something started happening. And so in the late, around 1969, yes, that was when residents of Dulce began to see some strange things flying around. And, and then especially 10 years after the 1967 nuclear explosion device that exploded in that area, something started happening, and that was that radiation started leaking out from that ground zero area, and that began some kind of a strange goings on. In other words, I'm talking about the many animals getting sick after that, and
Cattle
it took
mutilations,
about
bro.
10 years to see that effect of that explosion. And I'm talking about the leak of radiation in that area. And so, anyway, this is just part of the lot of different stories about that area. And I'm not saying that even before, maybe perhaps in 1950s or the 1940s, it's possible that people may have seen some weird object flying, because I heard reports that even before 1967, some people claimed that they had seen strange things flying over in that area. In fact, in 1950, some residents in Dulce claimed that they had seen a bunch of flying saucers flying over Dulce and going towards the Farmington, New Mexico area. That was in 1950. And I'm not sure if you knew that in 1950, in the town of Farmington, New Mexico, there was an amazing mass sightings of objects for 3 days that took place in Farmington, New Mexico. But this is part and parcel of all this strange things that have happened in that area of Dulce, and I'm talking about, various things that took place after, especially after 1970, and in the late 1970s, the early 1980s, in the late 1980s, there were strange things like cattle mutilation that started happening in that area. So basically, here's what happened. In 1979, the state senator from New Mexico, I think Mr. Schiff, I think that was his name. He was a senator from New Mexico. He was concerned that, around around 1979, he was concerned that many ranchers in that area near Dulce began reporting that their cows had been mutilated strangely, and they were concerned because there were complaints by ranchers in that area, and so what happened was this: in 1975, there was a public meeting in Albuquerque Public Library. I'm talking about 1979, in which the public meeting was convened in order to address the grievances of the ranchers in the Dulce area. And so there were about 200 people that attended this public meeting in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And from that meeting, New Mexico State of New Mexico decided to assign a patrol officer to be in charge of investigating this weird cattle mutilation cases. So his name was Gabe Valdez. So he was appointed by the state of New Mexico to go to Dulce. The government gave him a house to stay in Dulce, and his whole family moved to Dulce in 1979 and began to investigate these strange cattle mutilation cases. And so that, in addition to the fact that around 1979, a person by the name of Paul Benowitz, who lived right near Albuquerque's Four Hills area. Yeah, he lived right next to Albuquerque's Kirtland Air Force Base. And I'm talking about the particular area of Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque that's called the Manzano underground nuclear facility, which is located in the northeast corner of the tremendously huge Kirtland Air Force Base. This gentleman, uh, uh, and his name, as you mentioned, was Paul Benowitz. He was a defense contractor, and he had been working with the Kirtland Air Force Base because he had a company called Thunder Scientific Laboratory right next to the main gate of Kirtland Air Force Base. And his company was called Thunder Scientific Corporation. And that was in 1979. He already was working and selling machines and equipments to Kirtland Air Force Base. But around 1979, while he was looking at the Manzano Mountains, which is right next to his residence, many nights he began to witness some strange lights hovering over the Manzano underground nuclear facility. And so he became curious and more curious, and then eventually the Air Force realized that they were being observed by this gentleman who they already knew because he was a defense contractor, and so that was also the beginning of the Dulce, New Mexico story. So everything seems to have started around 1979 because of Paul Benowitz and because of the appointment of Gabe Valdez to oversee the activities in Dulce. And so everything seemed to have taken place around that era, 1979. And another strange person that came into the scenery in 1979 was a researcher by the name of William L. Moore.
Yeah.
William L. Moore visited Kirtland Air Force Base in 1979 and met with this guy named Richard C. Doty, who was working at Kirtland Air Force Base as part of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. And both William Moore and this Richard Doty seem to have planted an idea to distract Paul Benowitz from looking at that underground nuclear facility, and they seem to have devised a plan to change the focus of attention from the Kirtland Air Force Base to northern New Mexico, and that is the Dulce area. It's very difficult to explain everything like this for those who are not familiar with this, but everything has like a story, that's intertwined. And so that is the beginning of the strange things about Dulce, New Mexico. And do you think, do I think that there is an underground base, what's commonly imagined as a U.S. alien collaborative biological laboratory underground somewhere next to Dulce, New Mexico? The answer is, I haven't seen any physical evidence that there's a physical underground base right under Archuleta Mesa or right under Mount Archuleta, which is located further northwest of the Archuleta Mesa, right next to the Colorado border. But, the fact of the matter is that even though there seems to be no physical evidence yet that there is a physical underground base near Dulce, New Mexico, uh, that does not mean that nothing is happening. As I
Right.
said, there's something happening because even today, we get reports from residents who claim to witness a flight of military helicopters over a Dulce area, occasionally. And there's no military base anywhere near Dulce, New Mexico, but yet people report occasionally the flight of dark military helicopters over Dulce many times. And also, even today, people report seeing some strange sights like, an 8 foot tall entity that almost resembles a Bigfoot just walking right by the Navajo River and right next to Dulce, New Mexico. And these reports are coming from people that are, well, I believe that they have nothing to gain from telling lies. And uh, I believe that many of these reports are real reports. The big question is, what are they seeing? That's the big question. And that there is something definitely strange there, but the difficulty is that we cannot get to the physical evidence of this phenomenon. But it doesn't mean that the phenomenon does not exist.
Right.
I think it exists, and the government is aware that this kind of thing exists even
Right.
today.
Okay. So, we're coming up on the end of this segment right here, and we're going to do 2 segments today, right?
Sure.
Okay. There'll be a little bit of break in between it, but I'll communicate with you after we're done here. We got about a minute and a half left. So for me, even at my stage of the UFO investigation, in my call it a career, when you start mentioning the military, and in this case the Air Force, and they're intentionally planting seeds. I mean, I read where William Moore actually admitted at a UFO conference in Las Vegas that he was purposely part of a disinformation campaign. He implicated Doty. Doty, I think, has since admitted it in some form. Um, uh, and yet you see guys like Stephen Greer interviewing Doty still. I think Linda Moulton Howe's interviewed him still. He's still on the scene after he's admitting that he's done this or that or whatever. And it's just amazing to me. You really got to study your history in this field to try to make sense of what's going on now. So when we return here shortly, I'm going to ask you about Doty and the military because they're covering up some other stuff, it looks like to me. And then there's a handful of other characters that I know you've interviewed. Krista Tilton. There's a lady named Cherry West, who's supposed, or Cherry Hinkle, that was supposedly Ann West. We'll talk about her. There's a little backbiting there between the two. Then you throw the Air Force into the mix, and you got Benowitz. Let's see, there's some William Moore. It's a big train wreck of stuff. And let's try to unravel that a little bit in the next segment. And thank you very much for your time, and we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.